All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory to Yahawah, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. And the elect begins with the 144,000. Yahawah, who the world ignorantly calls God and Jehovah, BAHASHAM is in the name. YAHAWASHI, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. The Rakakwadash, which is the Holy Spirit. I'm the brother I will lump you with the Jam at Chicago camp out here in Chicago. Come back at you, brothers and sisters at a household of faith of the Hopeful Right Select with another lesson. And Lord willing, I hope this lesson be edifying through the spirit and power of YAHAWASHI. Once again, I hope this lesson is edifying. As you can see the title, beware of these women, man. Because because as the scriptures say, man, if the woman became the beginning of sin and through her we all die, man. Because ultimately, especially these women today, man. They use these different schemes, man. They get over on these men, man. They ultimately benefit off Esau's system, man. They do these different things to get one over you, man. You know, but ultimately just to beware of these women, man. Just because a woman look good, you ultimately, she got a fat ass or some big titties, for an example. You want the box. Because you got to understand, man, we live in a society where ultimately these women be getting around, man. A lot of these women have, different type of diseases, man, HIV, STDs, man, herpes, you name it, man. Ultimately us, especially, us brothers that's in this truth, man, we have to beware of these said things, man, you know, because scripture says, give them not liberty to gad abroad, man. These women are the most freest they have ever been, man. And these women are just dangerous, man. A lot of these women be getting these men killed, man, be putting men up one against another, man. You know, and this is the type of power these bitches essentially have, man. You know, so we also have to be aware, of the devices of these women, man. Speaking more so to the, as brothers in this truth, man. You know, and it stems from what a brother had posted it within the the group me. How ultimately here in Chicago was been revealed that it was that over 818 HIV cases have been reported, man, amongst the Northern Kingdom, and just best believe it's amongst the Southern Kingdom also, man. Hey, the nigger woman, the Hispanic woman, the Native American woman, and really all these women, in fact, man. Just beware of them. But just to start it off real quick, man, just get straight into the point. This is the book of Sirach 25, uh, better known as Ecclesiasticus 25, and verse 19. All wickedness is but little to the wickedness of a woman. Let the portion of a sinner fall upon her. And exactly right, man. All wickedness is but little wickedness to the wickedness of a woman, man. Ultimately, when a woman commits adultery, man, she thinks little of it, man. When these women do these different type of abominable acts, man, they ultimately cast it to the side, man. Because women are naturally wicked, man. You know, it's because of a woman that we're in this predicament, man. Hey, going back to the garden, what Eve did, ultimately adhering to the philosophies of the serpent, man. That's why we're in this predicament right now, man. Of what Eve ultimately done, and you ultimately had Adam, ultimately follow Eve and then partaking in the philosophies of the serpent, man. And that's why we're in this predicament today, man. You know, a lot of these men, like I said, are in jail, ultimately are in the grave, essentially because of a woman, man. You know, so all wickedness is but little wickedness to the wickedness of a woman, man. It says, let the portion of a sinner fall upon her, man. You see these different Pookies and Ray Rays getting caught up, by Keisha Maria, man. The so-called white woman, all these different type of women, man. You know, and it says, I'm gonna jump down to verse 21. Sirach 25 and 21. It says, stumble not at the beauty of a woman and desire her not for pleasure. Right. So we're not supposed to be looking because of a woman look good. She got a fat ass. Oh, she a good looking light skin. She a good looking dark skin. We're not supposed to be looking at the beauty of a woman, and ultimately say, damn, I just want the box. You really have to examine, you really have to read the spirit of these women, man. These different type of women that you get with, man, you have to vet them out, man. Just because a bitch look good, hey, them be in actuality, man, those be the worst ones. Be carrying all type of diseases, man, HIV, STDs, you name it, man. Stumble not at the beauty of a woman, because ultimately the beauty of a woman, that's how they get a lot of men, man. You know, ultimately catching men, putting them on child support, man. Making men beef once amongst another, man. That's what these women do, man. Hey, what's that? First Esdras, the fourth chapter, ultimately goes into that, man. What a man would do ultimately do for a woman, man, to keep a woman happy, man. That's how these different women ultimately control the minds of these men, man. You know, but the scriptures actually put us on game of what to look out for, man. And ultimately, how the different things that these wicked women comes with, man. Let's actually jump down. This is the book of Sirach 25, because this Sirach 25, the 25th chapter is heavy, man. This is the book of Sirach 25, and as I had mentioned before, Sirach 25 and 24 says, "Of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die." And right, the woman became it says, "Of the woman came the beginning of sin." So like it, of the woman became the beginning of sin, and through her we all die. Right, going back into the garden, man, of what Eve did. Ultimately, as I mentioned before, adhering to the philosophies of the serpent, man. And ultimately, that's how we ultimately fail as a nation, man. You know, ultimately of what Eve ultimately done, man. It says, "And through her we all die." It says, "Give the water no passage, neither a wicked woman liberty to gad abroad." And right, because these women are the most freest that they have ever been, man. Because even going back to the ancient world, you had what? You had a woman ultimately, under her father until she was married off into her husband, man, or given to her husband, man. But now these women have no father. These women are out here to do whatever they please, man. Ultimately getting basically freedom to do whatever they want, man. This is what Esau Edom has allowed, here in America, man. And ultimately what America is doing, America is trying to, spread those philosophies worldwide, man, by ultimately giving, these different women freedom, man. You know, that's what women's liberation ultimately has done to these women. Ultimately destroyed the minds of these women, man. Feel like they're better than men. Feeling like they don't need a man, man. This is what Esau Edom has promoted, to the minds of these women, man. They ultimately ate it up, man. What Eve did back in the garden, adhering to the philosophies of the serpent, and these women follow suit also, man. You know, Let me read that again. This is the book of Sirach 25 and verse 25. It says, "Give the water no passage, neither a wicked woman liberty to gad abroad." Right, a woman is not supposed to have liberty, man. She's supposed to be under the tutelage of her father or her husband, man. You know, ultimately, you give a woman freedom, you get, at which will result in here in 2026, man. A lot of these women jumping from rod to rod, man. A lot of these women having multiple kids by multiple different men, man. You know, and this is what America promotes, man. That's why the Lord is going to come back and destroy this place. Let's actually grab this in Proverbs. Let's see. This is the book of Proverbs 30 and 20. And it reads, "Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth and saith, I have done no wickedness." Right? You catch a woman in the act of adultery, man. And ultimately, because a woman doesn't have any integrity or accountability, man. She puts the blame on you, man. She feels like, when she even commits adultery, she feels like she hasn't done anything wrong, man. And that's for a lot of these women, because a lot of these women don't have accountability, man. You know, a lot of these women have multiple different men, man. It's a different term called a work husband. A lot of these women be saying they have side niggas, man. A work husband, side niggas. A nigga that do this, a nigga that pay for their food, a nigga that taking them out on dates, man. A lot of these with different women has multiple men that they're dealing with at one time, man. You know, got multiple, and a lot of these women be having men at home too, man. But as the saying go, it's not yours, it's just your turn, man. Because a lot of these women has been with multiple different men, man. Not only multiple different men, men that are down low, multiple different women too, man. Because a lot of these women go both ways. A lot of these women have slept with other men, other women. A lot of these women have slept with down low men, and in the result, a lot of these women be catching these different diseases, man. And that's why other brothers in this truth, we can't stumble at the beauty of a woman, man. Because like I mentioned before, a lot of these women that got the fat ass, that got the big titties, man. A lot of these different women that look good, they be the main ones that be having these different diseases, man. But let me read that again. This is the book of Proverbs 30 and verse Salakia. Proverbs 30 and 20, such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth and saith, I have done no wickedness. Right. These women have no accountability, man, of the things that they do, man. They put the blame on a man. Like I mentioned before, a lot of these women be having men at home, and a lot of these different women, you know, have multiple different partners, man. That's why a lot of these women can't pair up on, you know. So, hey, that's a true term, and in this society today, man, it's not yours; it's just your term, man. Because a lot of these women's minds are just gone, man. Let me grab this in Ecclesiastes. This is the book of Ecclesiastes 7:26. It says, and I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart, right, which goes back to the word law, which is the mind, whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth Yahweh shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. And exactly right, man. And ultimately, you got to understand, the beloved elder, had told me this, out here in GMS Chicago, man. Hey, the reason why a lot of women leave you, or sort of say, man, is because it's ultimately the Lord Yahweh BAHASHAM Yahweh shall protect you, from these wicked women's devices, man. Because a lot of these, like I mentioned before, a lot of these women begin a lot of these men killed, be trapping these men and child support, man. You have kids by these women, they entrap these different men, man. And that's what ultimately happened to Pookie and Ray Ray, man. The Lord has ultimately what? Pair a wicked bitch up with a wicked nigga. And ultimately what? That wicked nigga is taken, by the different snares that these women has out for him, man. Whether it be child support, whether it be, these different things, hey, being divorced by this bitch and she taking half your shit, man. A lot of these wicked niggas be, entrapped, with these different things, man. Read that again. Ecclesiastes 7:26. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets and her hands as bands. Because a lot of these women ultimately get, married, ultimately what? To divorce that man and ultimately to take half his shit, man. It says, whoso pleases Yahweh shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Right. So us brothers in this truth, man, it don't even, the reason why a lot of these bitches leave you, man, and a lot of these bitches go their way is because ultimately what? Yahweh BAHASHAM Yahweh Shai is protecting you at the end of the day, man. And the elder brother, out here in Chicago, told me that, man. Because it's easy for a wicked nigga to get a lot of these bitches is because what? It's ultimately the Lord, pairing this wicked bitch up with that wicked nigga. But ultimately, what? If the Lord take that bitch away from you, it's the elder brother Murph, say out here in Chicago a lot, man. You have to say to yourself, is you a wicked nigga? Because a lot of these bitches, are going to leave you, man. And it's ultimately Yahweh BAHASHAM Yahweh Shai doing it, man, to get that wicked bitch away from you. But let's actually grab this real quick. I had mentioned that first Esdras. Let's actually grab it real quick. Let me see. I think it's first Esdras. Bear with me for a second. Yep. This is the book of First Esdras 4. And it's a lot to this. This is the book of First Esdras 4 and verse 18. Yea, and if a man have gathered together, go. I'm gonna start up because there's a lot to this. I'm gonna start at verse 13. First Esdras 4:13. I'm gonna just read through it. First Esdras 4:13. It says, then the third who had spoken of women and the truth, this was Zerubbabel, began to speak. O ye men, it is not the great king nor the multitude of men, neither is it wine that excelleth. Who is it then that ruleth them, or have the lordship over them? Are they not women? Women have borne the king and all the people, and that bear rule by sea and land. Even of the came, so like it, even of the came they, or either of the same they, and they nourished them up that planted the vineyards from whence the wine cometh. These also make it garments for men. These bring glory unto men, and without women cannot men be. Yea, and if a man had gathered together gold and silver or any other thing, it's like any other goodly thing, do they not love a woman which is commonly in favor and beauty? And letting, and like I said, as I read in that in that Sirach, man, stumble not at the beauty of a woman, man, because a lot of these men ultimately get taken because they fell for a beauty of a woman, man. It says, verse 19, it says, letting all those things go, do they not uh gape, and even with open mouth fix their eyes fast on her, and have not all men more desire unto her than unto silver or gold or any goodly thing whatsoever? A man leaveth his own father that brought him up, and his own country, and cleaveth unto his wife. He sticks not to spend his life with his wife, and remember neither father nor mother nor country, right? Because ultimately when a man get with a woman, they become one flesh, man. And it reads, verse 22, it says, but this also you must know, that women have dominion over you. Do ye not labor and toil and give and bring all to the woman? And that's what a lot of these men do, man. They rob, they steal, and it's going to get into it, man. But a lot of these women, ultimately, that's been ran through. A lot of these women, ultimately, what? They become servants for a woman's sake, man. It says, verse 23, it says, yea, a man taketh his sword and goeth his way to rob and to steal and to sail upon the sea and upon rivers, and looketh upon a lion and goeth in the darkness, and when he have stolen, spoiled, and robbed, he bringeth it to his love. Right? A nigga kill somebody, a nigga rob somebody, all because of a woman, man. A woman can lie about these said things to ultimately to get a nigga to do her bidding, man. And these are the different things us brothers in this truth have to be aware of, man. You really have to vet and really have to examine, hey, is this bitch using me? For what I have, man. You have to, examine all sides, man. But just because a bitch look good, you want the box, doesn't mean, it's wise to get with this bitch or to even sleep with this bitch, man. But let's continue on this first Esdras. Verse 25, it says, wherefore a man loveth his wife better than father and mother. Yea, many there be that have run out of their wits for women, and became servants for their sakes. Right, a lot of these niggas lose they mind over these women, man. Ultimately what? Wisdom will go out the door, and ultimately because a bitch will easily throw the box at a nigga, and ultimately to get them under control, man. Because a lot of these niggas are simple minded. You know, that's why the scriptures put us up on game of what to look out for, and ultimately how these bitches ultimately come, man. The scriptures ultimately put us up on game, man, of what to look out for. But I'm gonna finish this out. Verse 26, it says, yea, many there be that have run out of their wits for women, and became servants for their sakes. Many also have perished and have erred and sinned for women, because you have a lot of men in the grave or in the prison system, all behind a woman, man. And when that nigga ultimately goes to jail, and when that nigga ultimately perish, man, hey, she goes to the next nigga, man. A lot of these women are ultimately what? They look at men as a how can I say it? As a commodity, man, as a tool. That's a better word for it. A lot of these women look at these men as a tool, man. You know, and ultimately what? As the scripture says, they became servants for their sake, man. And us brothers in this truth, man, we have to ultimately what? Use wisdom at all times, man. Just because a bitch look good doesn't mean it's wise to get with that bitch, man, or to get the box from that bitch, But it's actually one more precept I actually wanted to get. Because a lot of these women are whores in actuality, man. You know, a lot of these women has, gotten with multiple men, because in actuality, the first man a woman sleep with, that's her husband. Let's actually grab that Amos 7 and 17. This is the climate that we're living in right now, man. These are the different things that we have ultimately, have to be aware of, man. This is the book of Amos 7 and 17. And it reads, Therefore, thus saith the Lord, thy wife shall be an harlot in the city, and thy sons and thy daughters shall fall by the sword, and thy hand shall be divided by line, and thou shalt die in a polluted land, and Israel shall surely go into captivity for of his land. Right? Our wives shall be a harlot in the city, man. A lot of these women has had multiple men, man. And a lot of these women at this current moment are seeing multiple men, man. And you're never the only one, man. You know? A lot of these women a lot of these women get around, man. And a lot of these women, these said women has STDs, HIV, man. Just because a bitch look good, man. Hey, they be the worst ones, man. A woman with a fat ass, big titties, man, they be the worst ones. You know, a woman at the age of 15, 16 already got the body count of 30 and 40 men, man. And this is the climate that we're currently living in, man. A lot of these bitches are whores, man. And these are the different things that we have to be aware of as men in this truth, man. A lot of these women will use the box to ultimately to get one up over you, man. And these are the different things that we have to be aware of as men in this truth, man. But just something I wanted to get into real quick. Salaki, I was jumping all over the place. Just a few points I wanted to hit. Lord, and I hope this lesson was edifying. I want to end up by giving all praise, honor, glory to YAHAWAH, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, BAHASHAM, YAHAWASHI, double honors to the elders and the apostles of great millstone that taught us this truth, and salutations to the hopeful elect that's around the four corners of the globe. Lord, and I hope this lesson was edifying. Till next time, Kwame Yasharella, Shalom, and the Bible Ball. Until next time, Lord willing.